Hey guys, it's Connor here. Welcome to the HooperCast. Before we get started on today's episode, I just wanted to take a second to thank everybody who has ever listened to our show in its current form and its various formats over the years, whether it be on the original blog post on Blogger or any of the YouTube versions, or even that year on iTunes we had, to its current form with video and sound on YouTube and SoundCloud. Just want to thank everyone who ever participated in that and gave us a listen, just to see what we were about. We appreciate you. Stick around to the end of the episode to hear more about that and about what's next. But for now, enjoy this really special episode of the HooperCast. You're damn right, everybody. It's the HooperCast, and we're excited because
I'm excited.
I sound a little too excited there.
I know. You're too enthused.
I am very enthused. I need to have some alcohol to depress my system, and then I'll get. Oh yes, not to because it's a.
Oh me.
Or you could just see Infinity War again. That'll depress your system.
Yes, indeed. It is the HooperCast, everybody. We are also on SoundCloud. So if you're listening to us, if you're listening to us, then you knew that. Welcome to SoundCloud. If you want to know what we look like, we're on YouTube. So go over to YouTube page, HooperCast. If you're on YouTube, hello. If you want to listen to just the audio, you close your eyes, or you go over to SoundCloud, and the audio is over there as well. So yeah, anyway, Dustin, John, hello.
Hello.
Howdy.
And so yeah, we thought this was a momentous occasion to try and get a guest on the show. And John, We haven't talked to you on the mic in a while.
It has been
Hooper, you missed the chance to say we decided to assemble.
Oh.
Fuck.
We have to do it again. Take two.
Okay. Here we go. Ready? All right, here we go. And okay. HooperCast assemble!
There you go.
Woo! All right.
Let's try it again, but without Ed Norton this time.
Okay. As it should be.
Oh,
poor Ed.
Oh.
I liked Ed Norton.
Ed Norton.
All right.
I like Terrence Howard too. Sorry.
Yeah, Terrence Howard, yeah.
No, I could. No, they're
Hugo Weaving.
Hugo Weaving.
Whoopsie.
not to say too much, but those two are dust in the wind at this point.
Yes.
So let's move on and say we're going to talk real quick about Infinity War without spoilers, but I gotta be honest, it's going to be really tough to say much. Yeah. So I just want to take this opportunity to say you're safe for a few minutes. We're just going to have a real quick little powwow about it. I will, and I figure we can give our ratings pretty much off the top, I think. Yeah. I would say I'll go first. So without saying too much about the story elements, because there are lots of plot twists. I really liked Infinity War. I got to see it. We've all been waiting for this film. It's been hotly anticipated, and so it can't be understated how big of an event film this is. I also got to see it in a really good theater this time, with a good, small crowd, but a good, respectful crowd too. So I actually was able to relax and just enjoy the film. But I gotta tell you, when I sat down and started watching this, I was just happy and content that here I was and it was finally happening. So I just went into this movie with just the best mood, because I was just so happy that here we were. So I like the film. I think it's a very good mixture of these many characters. I was very satisfied with what I saw on the screen. And I obviously would recommend it to anyone, and I will explain later on in the review why I believe that it is that this film deserves a 5-star rating from me. at least. So I can't say too much more about it unless I just piggyback off of y'all's points. So let's get that. Dustin, how about you?
Well, since you talked about sort of your mood going in and your theater experience, I will share mine. So I saw this just normal standard theater, the theater chain, nothing fancy. I did use Atom for the first time, which was super cool. I don't know if you guys have ever used that. It's a really cool app. And
Adam Warlock?
Adam Warlock, yes. It was a moderate crowd. It wasn't huge, but I literally left work early to go. So I went at, I think it was like 4 p.m. So it was, most people are still at work. So it was a moderate crowd. But the people that were there were loving it. A lot of great reactions from the crowd during the film. Nobody was talking. It seemed like everybody was taking it pretty seriously, which is cool because a lot of times the theater that's closest to me is part of a mall. So a lot of people just kind of like wander into the movie theater with no, like, it's just something to do. So anyway, I was pleased with the crowd. I was in a good mood going in. I'll mirror what you said, Hooper. Just it's cool to kind of see the build up for all of this, and then to know that you're going to experience it, I think was just super cool. I will say, and I'll admit to this. This is, I guess, the pessimist, like the cynic in me, maybe, but I kind of expected, I really hoped that I would love this movie, but I kind of expected that I wouldn't. I think of the three of us, I'm the more critical of these movies, but I do love the movies. So I really wanted it to be good. Like, I didn't want to leave going like, oh, I'm going to have to be the one that's going to give the bad review. Like, I'm going to have to do the thing. And so I didn't want that to happen. So I went in hoping it was going to be good, but expecting it to kind of disappoint me. And I'm super pumped to say that I was not disappointed. In fact, my expectations were met and then exceeded. So I really enjoyed this movie for a lot of reasons. I think it corrected a lot of issues I've had with Marvel movies in the past. And anybody who's a watcher, a longtime viewer of this show will know what I'm talking about. I think that, I really super recommend seeing this movie, but also seeing this movie big. So don't wait for the red box. Go see it in theaters, and if you can see it more than once, and if you can see it on IMAX, don't see the 3D. I didn't see it myself, but just don't do that.
I did.
Did you? Okay, all right. Well, maybe you have a different opinion. But for me, I can't recommend it in theaters enough. This is a movie that you should see with a crowd. This is a movie that you should see big. So go when there are going to be people there. Don't go at 1 p.m. when you know it's going to be empty, and don't go 5 weeks from now when you know it's going to be empty. Go now. Go when there's a crowd.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. What's your rating, Dustin?
I'm going to say 4 stars.
Okay, cool. All right, John, how about you, man?
Well, like I said, I saw it in IMAX 3D. This was the first film to be shot entirely in IMAX, a major film. And so I'm not a fan of 3D typically. I didn't really think the 3D added much to this, but it was more just seeing it on IMAX I wanted to do. And it was great. Definitely the way to see it. And my theater was packed. It was a huge theater, and everyone was cheering at certain points and laughing and gasping at certain points, which is pretty rare. I gasped a couple of times myself, which I never do. I don't think I've ever done in a film before, audibly gasp. But no, that was definitely the way to see it, and I agree 100% about seeing it with a crowd that's enthusiastic about it. And I had high expectations going into it too. Being a fan of that arc of the comic, I never thought that they would replicate it, to kind of take that risk, because the arc of the story is really dark in the comic, in a bizarre cartoonish way, almost like but anyway, I love the movie. It probably precariously sits at the top of my MCU list for now.
Okay.
If I had to rank them all, because there's 10 years of
Story
and character behind it. It really did more so than the other Avengers film feel like a point that everything was building to. So I loved it.
What's your star rating, John? Out of 5 stars, what would you give this movie?
Out of 5 stars, I give it 5 stars.
Okay, yeah.
Sweet.
So and let me can I just also point out just real quick, like a 4-star from Dustin is like a 6-star from me. I mean, it's
I don't know if I've ever given a 5-star to anything.
Armand White.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm saving that for the one that makes me cry.
Okay. I didn't cry.
Like I said, 5
I did
stars.
tear up at 1 or 2 points.
Yeah.
Well, I would call that crying. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've never sobbed in a movie theater, but I don't know.
I did cry watching E.T. in college. Like, cry. It was sad.
Dude, yeah. That and Toy Story 3.
Thank God I was alone at the house.
I can't watch Toy Story 3. Like, I love Toy Story 3, but I can't watch it.
That's a tough one.
Ringing endorsements, I would say, or semi-ringing endorsements from all 3 of us. This is probably where us and the spoiler-free folks part ways. I think we could. I think.
Why are you even here?
Yeah, I know.
We can pull a Powers booth in Tombstone. Well, bye.
Go see Infinity War. Definitely see it big. See it more than I. This is one of those rare movies that I feel like I want to see more than once in theaters. Not just like again on on disc, and not just again sometime read by but I want to go see it in the theaters again. I probably just can't, but especially having gone all the way through it and knowing, how everything turns out, I really want to go back through and sort of just get to watch other elements of it that I might not have been focused on more. Sure. I mean, this, like most of the late phase Marvel films, really does merit a second viewing. I think it really would enhance the experience. At least I find that to be the case. I think there's more and more subtext written into all these films that you can appreciate on multiple viewings. And I think Infinity War is full of those too.
Yeah.
And I gotta say too, Marvel has been. I've always liked the Marvel films, but I feel like the last 5 or 6 movies that they've done have been stellar. Every one of them.
Yes.
And this is just I feel like most franchises, after 3 or 4 movies, start getting worse, and I feel like they're doing nothing but
X-Men
getting continually better, which is awesome. They're on the upswing. So,
yeah, totally. Black Panther is one of my favorites from the MCU.
Same.
I liked Thor Ragnarok. Wasn't a huge fan of some of it, but yeah, it's like you're absolutely right. They're just getting, and I think it's the layeredness as we get comfortable with the characters. They're able to push the characters in new areas, show us new layers of them. So, for instance, in Thor Ragnarok, we've seen Thor so much. Now let's do a comedic take and let's get under his skin a little bit in a different way, because Dark World didn't really do anything for his character, and likewise, I don't think Age of Ultron did. So really, you're going all the way back to the first Thor movie before there was any real Thor character stuff. So Ragnarok's able to kind of deepen that. Civil War was able to do the same thing. You've got all these characters. Let's just add layer after layer after layer and push them in new directions. And so I think that's one of the things that I loved about Infinity War, is this is another layer to these characters. And it's just when you think you have them all figured out, and just when you think how they're going to interact with each other, and just when you think everything, you don't know anything. And I think that's super cool. Same with Black Panther. I mean, granted, we had only seen him in Civil War, but then his movie comes out and you're like, I know Black Panther, his origin was in Civil War. And then it's like, oh, but here's all this other stuff. And I think that's sort of the added advantage, is as we get further, we get deeper. So it kind of makes sense that at the beginning, you're in the shallow end of the pool, right? And then as the movies keep going, you keep getting deeper and deeper, and so of course they keep getting better. And you're right. Most franchises are not that way; they're reversed, and I don't know why that is.
Sorry, I thought I heard something outside my house. I was trying to listen.
Hooper's being strangled.
It's me.
Scranton Strangler over there.
Guys, go see the film. We're going to talk about spoilers now, story elements. There's a lot we need to unpack that we just can't do with you. Yeah. So
get out.
Get lost and let us know how you liked the film. Or don't. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do. You know what I'm saying? Just to recap things, just super quick for those who obviously remain, what happens. Thanos succeeds.
Yeah.
This film, I have a, before we did this episode, I asked everyone to have a list of who they think will live or die.
Yep.
This is my list right here. Here's a safe column. Here's a dead column.
I guarantee you that the two people at the top of the safe list did not make it out of the movie.
Well, I'm tearing it up. So if I can, let me see. The top of my safe column was Black Panther and Spider-Man.
I remember saying to people, I'm like, T'Challa, at the very least, he's going to be fine. Right. And of course, he's one of the first ones that, fades away or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I got my first four survivors.
That was one of my audible gasps in the movie when T'Challa faded away. I was like, "Oh no!"
I got I got the first four safe wrong: Black Panther, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and Star-Lord.
Yeah, Doctor Strange.
yeah.
All right, so again, a lot to unpack. I want to focus more about just the overall arc of the story, not necessarily the ending and what it means right now, but I will say that it was obviously not the ending I was expecting. So when I first got out of the film, I was thinking, I don't want to give that 5 stars. I wanted to give it 4 for a while. And it was because of how the movie physically made me feel at the end. I felt very not even sad, just I just felt so kind of depressed.
Sure.
And so now a few days removed, the more I think about it, the more I really love it, and my rating gets bumped back up to a 5. I think that there are lots of things in this movie. One of the things this movie does really well is it makes everyone's actions make total sense.
Yeah.
I was talking a couple episodes ago about The Shape of Water, and one of the reasons I liked that film is that everything everyone does makes sense in the context of the movie. There's not a single choice in that film where I go, I don't know, or could they really get away with that? There's always it makes sense. And so when you look back at it, if the Avengers, in terms of the arc of the Avengers, the first Avengers film, they sort of come together in an unlikely fashion. They ragtag this victory and stop an alien invasion of New York, and they save the planet. So then the second Avengers, they're established, they're badass, they're kicking ass, and Ultron shows up, and he starts to fracture them ideologically. They don't come out quite unscathed. They make a very public mistake that has. No, sorry, that's Civil War. They defeat Ultron, but they don't do it just 100% in the clear like the Avengers. And then you've got Civil War is not an Avengers film, but you have Civil War where then they split ideologically because of the fallout of their previous actions and the presence of Bucky Barnes. And now you have this film where they are totally scattered. The Avengers needed to. They've already sort of lost their relationships with each other. Some of them, they needed to actually lose a confrontation with an enemy, especially with the amount of pre-criticism, I'll call it, of Thanos as a villain. You had a lot of people going I don't know, he doesn't seem that threatening, hasn't done that much. They're talking about how terrible he is, how mean he is.
Are you quoting me?
Well, we all said it. We all said Thanos has been sitting in that chair. He doesn't do anything, and I'm just not sure. They're going to really have to show me something to sell me that he's threatening.
And so this movie's okay, first scene, here you go.
Yeah, the very first scene.
I like how we were all we were in a good mood going into it, and literally the first 10 seconds of the movie, it was ooh.
Here's two characters you like, they're dead now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and So for me, it's almost because here's an expectation I had. Because they made such a big deal about the part 1, part 2 nomenclature, and how they said, we're not going to call the other one part 2 anymore because this is not 2 parts of one story. It's 2 distinct stories. So I sort of took that literally, and I was like, okay, so are you going to wrap up the Thanos storyline in the first movie then? And I sort of thought maybe that's what they mean. Coming out of this is, they weren't lying, but that was a little misleading to say, because this is not a finished story.
Right.
It is a finished arc for Thanos. Yeah. And it is a cliffhanger for the Avengers, but I really like it because they needed to fail, and it made sense that they would fail. This villain that's been built up for 10 years is very, very dangerous. If they had just sort of beaten him, that would have been sort of like a temporary, I think, like, oh, cool, they won. But I think later it would have been criticized as another sort of safe victory for the Avengers. Right. And so when you look at that, just from a story standpoint, it's really ballsy that the villain wins. Yeah. It's even ballsier that we're sort of on board with his mission. Like, he's not a complete, like, stupid idiot evil man. He has a plan that will have a practical application, and that he proves has had results. Yeah. And then you have 10 years of stories built up, and they don't succeed. Yeah. And it makes sense, because if he's really as dangerous as we've been saying for all this time, he would win. He has a glove that can do anything, basically. Right. Why would he not win? Why would punchy powers stop this person? So in that respect, I really enjoy the story arc of this movie. And I think you could totally go back a second time and watch it, and in your mind go, Thanos is the hero, Thanos is the hero, Thanos is the hero, and really get something out of it looking at it from that perspective, because he has an introduction, he has a motivation that's made clear, he has sacrifices he has to make, and he sees his plan through, and he succeeds, and he's content.
It's a weird twist on the hero's journey, because we're introduced to, the status quo. We're introduced then to, what his goal is. He's given obstacles to that goal. He makes sacrifices in order to overcome the obstacles, and then, essentially achieves his goal. So it really is the hero's journey, just we kind of see him as the villain.
Yeah. John, what do you think about the story and I guess the ending for now?
Well, the biggest reservation I had going into this was I was wondering how much they were actually going to borrow from the comic storyline. Yeah. Because to me that was really kind of what I wanted to see, and I thought there's no way that they're going to replicate any of that. Like the snapping of the fingers, I said there's no way that they're going to kill off half the cast of this film, because the whole intent of the film is seeing all of them on screen together. I never thought that would happen. Yeah. Things like that. So the story kind of took all the elements of the book and like threw them in a blender and reimagined a lot of them. But I thought the story moved at a really good pace. I think when you have all the people that were splintered, you were cutting back and forth between different groups of people. I thought that worked really well. You covered a lot of ground pretty quickly. And as for the overall story itself, I liked it. I never thought that he would get all 6 stones in this movie. I thought like a stopgap was going to be maybe he got like 4 of them. And then they defeated him somehow, and he would be kept at bay for a little bit, and that's where we were going to pick up with the next one. Yeah. So it was unexpected to me that he, got as far as he did, but I thought everything worked well. I thought the characters that they teamed, the character pairings and things like that they did worked really well for the most part. I liked it. As for the ending, I didn't expect them to do that, but once it happened, it wasn't unexpected to me that they killed off, half the characters. Certain characters I didn't think were going to die. The ending wasn't a shock for me. I'll say that because in the back of my head, I always went that, that was a huge moment in the comic. But there were elements that did shock me. But the ending, it was funny because afterwards I heard a lot of people saying, well, that was ambiguous and confusing and all that. I don't know. I thought it was extremely straightforward what happened. It was. And everything, so No, I like the ending, and I'm even though I know that some of those characters are, almost certainly going to come back to life somehow. I like that they lost, and those guys are dead, and their friends think they're dead. The friends don't know that they're, there's another Spider-Man movie slated in the real world and stuff like that. So, seeing everyone's reactions to their friends, they're gone. It was one of the most emotional MCU moments, I think, with Spider-Man and T'Challa and some of these other characters, and the characters that didn't die, the characters that died earlier on in the film. That aren't coming back, presumably. Yeah. So,
we'll talk about that.
And I would agree. I think the story is very well handled. What it reminded me of, and I think in a great way, is something like The Lord of the Rings, where you've got a large cast of characters, and so you've got to figure out a way to bounce between different stories and essentially splinter the group so that we're getting a broader idea of what's happening in this world. Because if we just stayed with 18 people the whole time, we would have a very narrow frame of reference for the scope of this war. So just like with Lord of the Rings, initially the 9 are together, and then Frodo and Sam go off, and then you have, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, and then you have Merry and Pippin, and then Merry and Pippin get split, and then Gandalf shows up, and like the whole thing is splintered to the point where we're getting 4 different stories that are all giving us sort of context to this larger war. So in that way, it really reminded me of that. An example in maybe a superhero context would be The Dark Knight, where you've got these multiple stories all happening simultaneously, and if we had just stayed with Bruce Wayne or Batman, we would have a very limited frame of reference. But the fact that we're able to move then to see what Harvey Dent is doing, and we're able to move to see what Commissioner Gordon is doing, we're able to move to see what the Joker is doing, we're able to see the larger picture. And so I'm really thankful that they fractured the group, and it wasn't like early in the movie they're all together and we get that satisfaction of seeing like, yeah, they're all together, and then but now what? Like now the whole thing is just a beat 'em up. So instead, we've got like the group that's looking for something. We've got the group that's going to go try to make a hammer, and then we have the group that's going to go do this, and it's all different things. And so for me, it provided context to the larger impact of Thanos' plan and the war to fight Thanos, which was absolutely necessary. And I agree with you. I think the pairings of these characters were absolutely logical, but really perfect. So I don't know that I logically would have thought, okay, let me like write out, okay, Tony Stark, who's with him, and pared it down that way. And I don't know that I would have gotten the exact thing, but I know that looking back on it, it's like, oh yeah, that's the way it should have been anyway. So right. Yeah, you've got these groups and they're perfect pairings that are always. This is what surprises me in movies like this or like Lord of the Rings, where sure, you've got like maybe the more important story, like what Frodo is doing, or in this case, maybe what Tony Stark is doing, but you never have like remorse when you're watching a different story. So when you cut from Frodo to Aragorn, or when you cut from Tony Stark over to Thor, you never feel like, oh, just get back to Tony Stark. You are totally in with all of the stories, so that you're not just counting down the minutes until Tony Stark shows up again. And that's the way that it should be. And especially with an ensemble and with a movie like The Avengers, you have to care about all the characters enough. And that's what I maybe appreciated the most, is that at this point in the MCU, we care about these characters enough. We've spent enough time with them that if you give me, 15 to 20 minutes straight of Thor, I'm okay with that. And if you give me 15 minutes straight of Spider-Man, I'm okay with that. And I hate to be the first one to cast the stone, but with DC Comics, with Justice League, with whatever, you don't
Shots
have
fired.
that. Shots fired. You don't have that level of care. So when Batman says, "Okay, I'm going to go do this thing now," it's like, well, I want to watch that. Why am I watching Cyborg? Like, I don't care about Cyborg. And so that's the problem. And I think what DC had tried to do was said, well, they know Cyborg from the comics, so they'll like him here, but you can't assume that. And Marvel Studios actually spent the time to say, okay, yes, Iron Man from the comics, but get to know this Iron Man. Yes, Captain America, but get to know this one. And so you're not relying on like just ancillary knowledge. You're relying on the fact that I've seen Chris Evans as Captain America over and over and over again. I know him. And when I'm watching him, I care for him. And I think what surprised me the most in regards to that, and then I'll shut up, is that I actually cared about Scarlet Witch and Vision. These are the two characters that... So Vision was on my list. I always figured he would die. I think.
Oh, yeah, I think Vision was on all our lists.
Yeah, that was a given.
It was certainly on mine.
Right, absolutely. So that was a given. And I kind of
already poured one out for Vision.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
Vision was always on board.
It's true. He was already there. For Scarlet Witch, I was just kind of hoping she would die because I'm like, I just don't care. I honestly don't care about this character in the least. And so for me, like the first time they showed up in this movie, I think the first time you see them, they're like in a hotel room or something. And I literally rolled my eyes and was like, oh Lord. And because I was just like, I just don't care about these characters. And I kid you not, like, so they talk for a minute and I'm like, all right, whatever. And then they go out onto the street and then the one of Thanos' children attacks, or two of them. And from that moment on, it was like, boom, I'm on their side. And it was just a complete 180 that I didn't expect to have.
I think part of that was that they're no longer trying to build romantic tension between them. Like they're in a relationship. They've assumedly just, had some sex, and they both had that little conversation of like, I think this works. This is working, and it's like, I think it is too. And it's like, hey, you got some human, you got like a human face now. Like I think I think everything's cool. So immediately I thought like, okay, well they've figured this out. So now I feel like I've figured this out.
Well, I think I know why that is.
He gets impaled very quickly.
He does.
That was a great jump scare, by the way. Everyone in my theater.
I legit jumped too. Here's my theory. I think the reason for that is that during that conversation, I think this works. Yes, this works, kind of thing. Vision lets on to what his goal is, what his deepest desire is, which is to be with her, and her deepest desire is to be with him. And so here you have two characters that prior to this, I'm like, I don't care about them because I don't care. They don't have a story. And now all of a sudden they have goals. Boom, they're characters now. And so for me, they did just the kudos to the Russos, because what they did was they took two characters that going in, I was like, I hope they're dead. And in their first freaking scene, I'm on board with them.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Well, neither of those two are my favorite character, and I feel like they've kind of got a bum rap in a way, because Wanda was presented as a villain in Age of Ultron for the most of the movie, and then and Vision was only in the last half hour of that movie or so, and then in Civil War they were already kind of stuffed in this movie where it was already stuffed with people we already cared about more, and so going into this movie, they were kind of on the back burner. But like at the end when she has to kill him and everything like that, I genuinely felt for him. Like that was one of the times where I teared up, where she was having to kill Vision the first time, and then the poor guy was brought back to life, and they had to witness the whole thing again in a far more graphic way. Yeah, and it was like, I don't know. They're still not my favorite characters, but that moment really worked. That was one of the most solid moments in the whole movie.
For what I can say, that her having to kill him, that's where I That's what got me. That's the moment in the film that most got me, like that most brought me to tears, was that, because Paul Bettany's performance really sells it, because so again, like with the writing, you've established this relationship, and there's the context from the other films too, but especially in this film, they really sell their connection, and they do it with the setup and payoff of certain lines, like you asked me to stay, I'm staying, and it's okay, you can't hurt me, all I feel is you, and I was like, oh my god, and the music is really building there. And I'm thinking, like, he's so close, hurry up. There's all this emotion built into Wanda succeeding, but what it costs for her to succeed. And I just really thought that was effective. Especially when you take into account Alan Silvestri's score, which not to get on a tangent, but I think we could just say pretty much in one sentence, I thought his score was amazing in this movie. Really, I thought the music was so good, and they were so good with how and where they used it. Yeah, and I thought that was another example, because earlier in the film you have Gamora ask Star-Lord to make a very similar sacrifice. You have her say, if he takes me, you have to kill me. He cannot take me. And so it was almost the culmination of that storyline that they weren't even a part of, but we had been prepped for this idea of killing a loved one for the greater good. It's weird because Thanos, like, it's interesting that you bring that up, because like two characters, it's brought up multiple times, and Quill attempts to follow through, and he's thwarted. Wanda succeeds, but it's immediately taken away from her by Thanos. And Thanos succeeds, and he obviously though has to bear the cost of it. So it's really interesting that three characters were asked, two followed through, and one of them stuck. Just a nice little bit of narrative symmetry there. Well, and Thanos killing Gamora is the same, and even Thanos's ultimate plan of sacrificing people for the greater good. That's the theme. That's 4 times in one movie where people are sacrificed for people. And I think in a superhero movie, that's kind of the cream of the crop anyway, right? Like, that's what they're about, sacrificing a person for people. And dude, but it never felt like they were beating a dead horse either. No. Like I said, everything that happens in this film makes complete sense from a narrative standpoint, from a character standpoint. And every single, you're talking about how they paired them up. I too thought it was perfect, just because the character dynamics were perfect, but how they ended up there made sense. There was no shoehorned, like, oh, how would they, Thor ends up with the Guardians because his ship blows up, and they hear the distress call. So that's how they happen upon Thor. Kenneth Branagh is the voice of the distress call. And you could tell this from the trailers, but you could safely assume, like, okay, what I really like, just to interject before I make these other two observations about that, this movie doesn't have a traditional 3-act structure. And I thought, and when I noticed that, I thought, oh, does that bother me? But one, it kind of does if you are following Thanos as the protagonist, because kind of after he kills Gamora and he's committed to his cause, that's sort of like where the film like kind of begins its third act. But you can't have a 3-act structure with this many characters. So what they have instead is a natural unfolding of events. You have heroes who are scattered, a threat occurs and is building and progresses, and each of them instinctively reacts heroically. They don't have a lot of time. They don't have a lot of organization or resources, and all of them, without knowing which of their friends are doing anything, like, obviously no one knows about the Guardians, no one knows where Captain America is, and Captain America doesn't know that, no one knows where Banner is, and so no one has a full head count of where all their friends are and what they're doing. So they all just instinctively react and do the best. Most people assume
that Tony Stark is dead.
Well,
half an hour into the movie,
right? Like nobody is seeing the whole picture and how many allies are involved, and I really enjoyed that. Despite I'm assuming the assumption on most of their parts that the group they're a part of are the only people working to solve this problem.
Yep.
It was really cool that they both operated independent of each other and simultaneously fed the viewer context and plot progression through each of their groups. You've got all the space people together. You have all the New Yorkers together because it makes sense. The thing comes the Ebony Maw and the other big guy come to New York. Well, who's in New York? Stark's in New York. Strange's in New York. Spider-Man's in New York. The three of them end up on the spaceship. Yeah. You know, it makes
and Wong
sense. And Wong, but Wong doesn't come onto the ship.
Yeah.
You know, and you have you've got Steve Rogers and Romanoff and Sam Wilson all together because they're all on the run and they're all fugitives. They're the ones who all escaped judgment in Civil War.
Yep.
And again, like you said, you got the Guardians with Thor, although Thor goes off with Rocket and Groot to make a new weapon that can kill Thanos, and Rocket and Groot go with Thor because they're so much more impressed by him than they are with Quill.
Right.
who they say, who they asked to remain on the ship. Yeah. And the four of them later, or the three of them, because Thanos takes Gamora. But yeah, just how everything unfolds and how everyone ends up where they are and how the Guardians end up on Thanos' ship, and then they have the whole interaction of fighting the New Yorkers and thinking they're with Thanos, and you get that wonderful interaction between Star-Lord. You got three douchebags on one ship, and you've got Star-Lord saying proudly, they say something like, he makes a reference to Jesus. And so Stark keys in on that and goes, "You're from Earth." And he says very proudly, like, "I'm from Missouri." And he's like, "Yeah, that's on Earth, dipshit." Yeah. That's my favorite. It's like one of my favorite comeback in the movie. Yeah. I love Spider-Man and Star-Lord, you know, having very differing tastes on older films. Yeah. And how disappointed Star-Lord is that this kid doesn't like Footloose.
Right.
You know, just these golden interactions that I think really make the film. And despite an overwhelming sense of dread, you have characters who are paired together because their dynamics are just fantastic, but also because it just makes narrative sense. And I think that kind of marriage in writing is tough to make to conjure out of thin air.
And while we're on that, though, I think another thing to keep in mind, or at least to think that the Russos must have kept in mind, is the pairings also fit together tonally. So that's not to say that you couldn't have the Guardians with Captain America, right? You have Captain America being this more or less grounded kind of, you know, realistic-y kind of character, and then the Guardians, they you know, whatever, space opera.
I'll just say real quick, what I enjoy about Guardians with Stark and Strange and Spider-Man is how unideal it is in terms of getting a plan executed.
Right.
Which which is on display.
Yeah, exactly. But tonally, you know, you have these characters, like you said, Strange, Quill, and Stark, that the tones of those individual films, I feel like, mesh together well. And while they're not the same, obviously, you know, Doctor Strange is not Guardians of the Galaxy, but the marriage between the two is something that can still stay true to both. Now, I'm not sure how much input James Gunn, that's his name. I always get him and Sean confused. They're the same person. Anyway, James Gunn, I'm not sure how much he had influence on the script.
Well, he wrote all their scenes.
Okay, so it felt like that. Yeah. It felt like this was still Guardians of the Galaxy, and yet it still felt like it was Doctor Strange, and it still felt like it was Iron Man. It didn't feel like Iron Man's suddenly in in a James Gunn movie. It felt like they're two separate things. Boom, they're clashed together.
It felt so natural.
But they don't clash. They just gel. And I think that's amazing. And here we are just talking about that one pairing. But you can say the same thing about Rocket and Thor, and you can say the same thing about T'Challa and Steve, and over and over and over you can say it about every little pairing here.
And apparently too, I read today that they brought in Taika Waititi to
work on Thor
stuff. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah,
because he was still that same Thor from Ragnarok.
Right.
In other words, he wasn't like downgraded back to the Joss Whedon.
Right.
I say downgraded.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I'd consider that a downgrade.
Yes, he was not regressed. He was not downgraded to the Joss Whedon Thor, which, while still fine, is the old Thor. That's not who Thor is anymore.
Thor accepts himself now. Thor sort of knows that he's kind of like a lunkhead, but he also sort of knows he's very in touch with his abilities and very self-assured in his abilities. So, and especially on the ship, I mean, he's kind of vulnerable when these people happen upon him. So he postures a little bit in front of them, and which is what Rocket and Groot like so much about him, and why they ultimately decide to leave the ship to go with him, because Rocket wants to go to this forge where they make mega weapons, and he's pretty taken by this what they call the pirate angel. Thor, everything he does, he with the whole like, you just have a rope and like, what are you gonna do out there? And Thor's a god, and he goes out there and handles business, and Rocket's like, whoa, all right, like, I'm not used to a leader who is capable, I guess.
Right, sure. So while we're talking about Rocket and that whole story, so that whole story with Peter Dinklage and Stormbreaker and whatnot, for me that was the flattest of all the stories. But like I was saying earlier, it's not to the point where it's like, oh my gosh, just get back to Stark. It was like, okay, like this is fine, but as I've distanced myself from the film, having seen it several days ago, it's like, yeah, that's the part that to me won't stay. Like, that'll be the forgotten part, and it's not a failure on the part of Thor or Rocket. To me, it's a failure on the part of Peter Dinklage. I think that Peter Dinklage is forgettable, and honestly, the whole thing is just kind of goofy, but not in like the goofy, quirky way, but goofy in the we thought this wouldn't be goofy way.
It felt like stunt casting to cast like a famous little person as a giant dwarf. And even there's nothing wrong with his casting, he does find a serviceable job in the role. But if you're going to nitpick, Dustin, I will be on board with the Peter Dinklage casting, just because I'm just like, oh, okay.
Well, and see, I'm going to disagree with you because on one count, which is that I haven't seen Game of Thrones beyond the first season, but I think we could probably, I hope we should all look at Peter Dinklage and say, guy's not that talented. I've seen him now in several things, and I'm just like, I don't understand. Like, he was a voice in that Destiny game, and they literally recast him after the game was out. Like, they put out a patch to remove his voice from the game because it was so bad, notoriously bad. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but like, the whole time he's talking, I'm like, you're the one in this movie that I don't buy as a character.
I thought that scene was like probably the weakest sequence.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was his fault. I think it was just more like that character was there to serve a very specific purpose, and they didn't really focus enough on giving him a lot of character.
Yeah, no, this is true.
Well, I think also
and
this is
that
one of those
scene paid off for me too, because even though it was my least favorite part of the film, probably, I liked that it actually did pay off later when Thor finally shows up to the battlefield, and he's clearly the strongest person there by far.
Also, that's going to carry over into Avengers 4. That weapon. Yes. I mean, that weapon has significance, and they're not done with it. And it works a lot more to establish its presence in this film than to come out at Avengers 4 and be like, oh, by the way, in this film, we also have a mega weapon. I think this MacGuffin that we just made.
I think my main problem was, you could remove Peter Dinklage from that that whole thing and it would be the same. Like you could tell me the same story, but it's literally just Groot, Rocket, and Thor.
That's fair.
And just have Thor be like, oh, there's this, because all it is a mold. It's not like they had to have Peter Dinklage say, okay, now we need this and now we need this and let me teach you how to cook. It was essentially like, there's a mold, pour this thing into the mold. Like it's not hard. So you could have just had Thor and Rocket figure that out.
I think that's fair.
No, I disagree. I think to have Thor suddenly be well versed enough in blacksmithing to just show up at someone's defunct forge and restart it, especially the way he has to do it, being outside the ship and Rocket being out there. Like I don't think Groot's gonna pour the mold. But even if it didn't, the idea that for the exposition to happen, he'd have to essentially explain to Rocket upon arriving there how everything works. I think it just works a lot more to have an expert who's already there who converses with the two of them rather than Thor just spitting lines at Rocket. I just think it's harder to write if Thor is the only one there, I think.
I would agree, except I think it should be reversed, where Rocket's the one who can figure out how to do it, and Thor's like, I mean, I was here when they made Mjolnir or whatever, and like, I remember it had something to do with this thing, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, that's a thing," and it's they figure it out together. I feel like whether that's the right way to do that scene or not, it's just that you could theoretically do it without Peter Dinklage, and it wouldn't really change the movie all that much. Unless Peter Dinklage in Infinity War 2 like shows up and plays a vital point. Like he's the one character in this that I feel like we may never see in the MCU.
He's done.
Yeah.
So
why?
I don't think
we will.
You see what I mean? So like that to me is the only thing.
But two things about that. I'd hate to harp on this, but like I think that one, Thor probably wasn't there when Mjolnir was forged because it was Odin's for the longest time, and two,
it was Hela's first.
Yeah, this is true.
That's true. I don't think that Rocket knows that much about forging like a god weapon necessarily. Rocket knows a lot about weaponry, but he knows a lot more about, I say man-made, it's a big universe, but I don't think he knows that much about like, sort of mystical large scale weapon with semi-magical properties. I think he's like he seems like a gun dude, and this is like a apples and oranges.
It's true. Although, they could find a big cookbook essentially and Rocket's reading it to him or whatever. I mean, there are a million different ways you could do it. But yeah, I see what you're saying. I guess it
is a tough scene, definitely, because
I guess what it distills down to is like, Peter Dinklage is the character that we won't see again. And so it's kind of like, well, then why did we see him at all? That's valuable screen time that we could have given to Thor, or we could have given to Rocket, or whatever. But
what it does accomplish is showing Thor sort of doing the work, like sort of like kind of like I said, like everyone's sort of doing their part to take down Thanos, or attempt, I guess. Thor is the one who's going like, okay, well, we could make a big weapon that could kill him, and he has really the better chance of everyone. Like everyone's got a good plan, like the take the gauntlet off him. That's a pretty good plan. Get this special axe to kill him. That's a pretty good plan. And destroy the Mind Stone. That's a pretty good plan. So everyone sort of has like their, okay, well, here's the best thing we got. Thor's like, I'm going to make a weapon. Stark said, let's take the glove off of him, or whoever did, Star-Lord or whatever, or Strange ultimately, I guess. And then everyone on Earth is going, okay, well, all we can really do is stop him from getting all of them. And Vision's sort of talking about killing himself. So let's get the stone out of him, destroy it, and we'll stop him in the meantime. So I think for that, this is just Thor's leg of the tripod going, all right, well, here's the best I can come up with.
Sure.
But I do agree, like narratively and in terms of watchability, it is probably the slowest sequence, but it does ultimately feed into Thor's moments he has later in the film, which are satisfying.
So John, does of the three of us, I think you'd be the one to know. Is there a comic precedent for Stormbreaker, or is that invented for the film? Just curious.
The Stormbreaker is the Beta Ray Bill's weapon.
Okay.
A massive hammer. So it's not really a Thor weapon. I doubt we'll ever see Beta Ray Bill in these movies. So they probably just took they probably just kind of took that and changed it. But yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Just curious. I obviously, I don't know.
I feel like they MCU'd it where it's like we're taking from this heavily, but it's not the same thing.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to shuffle along, but does anyone have any sort of further thoughts on the events of the film before we get into the future?
I want to talk one thing that may dovetail into future.
Okay.
But so because we may talk about it then, let's discuss it here. So throughout the film, it becomes clear that Bruce cannot transform into Hulk.
Yes.
So obviously this may take us into what does the future hold, but were you guys getting the sense in that Hulk is maybe scared?
Yes.
Okay.
Hulk
or shamed. That he upset that he didn't win that fight at the beginning.
So Ruffalo said that, at least in this film, I read somewhere that he said right now Hulk's developmentally is kind of right around like a 5-year-old. So I think, like we said, in the very first scene of the film, the Hulk, shows up and fights Thanos, and he gets his ass handed to him.
Yes.
Very quickly, so that both establishes Thanos as a big threat, as the biggest gun on the Avengers team can't do shit against him.
Yeah.
And 2, that sort of creates like a sort of like performance anxiety for the Hulk, because now he's like, oh, well, I failed. I can't do it. And the Hulk has never failed. If you recall, who has he faced that he's not beaten, except for like Thor, arguably. But like he's never come up against like an enemy.
Probably Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh
Man, that was rough. Oh, that was rough.
Well, there's that, certainly.
Me.
So I think it totally makes it's both like, okay, so it's definitely like a way to go, okay, we need to save some stuff for the other film, so we need a reason for Hulk to not show up, but it also does work in terms of character, because if you're going to have him on the ship when Thanos shows up, he can't just kill Thanos, so he has to fail. What's the implications of this failing? What would that do to him psychologically? And in terms of the relationship that Banner and Hulk have, which is now sort of closer than it's ever been, they're really doing a great job having the two of them. Someone said like, oh, they're definitely two very different people, and they're sort of on display how different they are. I was like, well, it was always on display how different they were, because one was like a meek scientist and the other was a full-blown monster. And so if anything, they're getting closer together where they're actually talking to each other. They were not on speaking terms before this film. Banner is speaking to the Hulk. Hulk responds.
Yeah.
And Banner doesn't, and Banner's not afraid of him. He's no longer afraid of what happens when the Hulk comes out. He sort of is, in a way, mentoring Hulk. He's trying to get him like, come on, I need you, buddy, I need you. And he's like, no, I can't. And that's really, really interesting to me.
Well, and I think that is just credit to Marcus and McFeely, because it's not like surface level, like, okay, Hulk loses, so then through the rest of the film, like he's like trying to beat everybody up, you know what I mean? It's like that's the easiest thing to do, or like, okay, now I'm going to try harder. That's the easiest thing to do. But the smartest thing to do is to go the opposite way and say, well, then I just won't be Hulk anymore.
Right.
Like
he's afraid of him.
Exactly. And I think that's the smarter way to do it. And had I been writing it, I don't know that I would have made that call.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
I might have thought about it, but whether I would or I wouldn't, I don't know. But if I had, I certainly would have been too afraid to say, okay, no Hulk in this movie. Like, to pull that trigger, I think is crazy.
I have a question for you guys. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but have you guys heard the notion that might have been a last minute change?
I haven't heard that.
Was supposed to appear in that Battle of Wakanda.
No.
So obviously there's that shot that was in the trailer of the Hulk.
The money shot.
Right.
Yeah. Which you could chalk up to like, well, that,
misleading.
It was like Thor with the eye and
intentionally misleading marketing.
Yeah, mislead you.
Yeah.
But now there have been toys that have come out that have shown Hulk as a character busting out of the Hulkbuster armor.
I thought that was going to happen.
Well, there's that scene where he's being overwhelmed by the creatures, what have you, and you're like, well, he's going to bust out. And
Yeah.
there's like a big rumor now that was like a last minute change, but the toys were already created. But there's literally toys where he is busting out of the Hulk himself, not Banner, is busting out of the armor, the Hulkbuster armor.
Well, I like it better the way that it is.
I do too.
I do too.
Because if he was there, he's just going to punch some aliens, and then he'll still fail against Thanos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you've already set up that he's afraid to come out. He doesn't want to come out. Why have him come out and fail twice? But I did think, especially when the arm ripped off, I thought he's like, if there's any time, buddy, it's now. I thought you were going to see a big green arm appear out of the suit and just strangle the guy. Yeah. But I think we all know what narratively this does is it gives Banner a chance to make a difference, not just with his brain, but he's got the armor, and he knows Veronica, so he knows that gauntlet, he knows that the glove is gonna fly up because it's designed to take the Hulk away, and the reason he knows that is he helped design Veronica, so he knows about, because I've seen some people like, oh, he just knows how to operate. I've seen it both ways with the armor. I've heard some people going, oh, so he just knows how to operate the armor. Yeah, he knows how to run and punch as a large thing because he's the Incredible Hulk and he designed the armor. And on the other direction, some people are like, why couldn't he do more with the Hulkbuster armor? Because we saw it do so much. Because the guy who flies the suits was operating it in Ultron. The guy who just sort of designed some features is now operating it. Banner has never used this armor, presumably. So
Don Cheadle picked it up so fast. Like I don't understand that.
Yeah, there's a lot of inconsistency with the Iron Man armor too, because there's that shot of Tony falling from a crazy altitude in the first film, falling through his house, and he's fine. And then Rhodey falls a fraction of that and is paralyzed.
Right.
There's
exactly.
A ton of with the Hulk stuff and the Hulkbuster, you just got to run with that.
That's before you've got films applying to each other. You've got the first Iron Man before they were even sure they were going to actually do the extended.
Well, I agree.
But I just think if you really want to split hairs, I do have like a defense for that. I think that Rhodey, even though no one really can prepare or is more naturally suited to fly like a bodysuit, when it comes between Rhodey and Banner, you've got a guy who is a pilot who is already sort of a fit man of action. Operating the suit is still a little bit quick of a learner. Banner makes a lot more sense to be someone who just isn't comfortable in it, because I don't even picture this guy as like a runner. I don't think he even exercises. So as opposed to Rhodey, who's at least in shape and understands a little bit of sort of machinery, piloty stuff, Banner is just like, I want to do some math, but I have to put on this big suit instead. Thank God I'm a Hulk sometimes, and I'm starting to remember things as the Hulk. Because remember, he knows what Thanos looks like. Banner didn't lay eyes on Thanos, but he knows who he is. So he's clearly starting to remember things that the Hulk sees. Right. So I thought that him using the Hulkbuster suit made as much sense as they were asking me to believe in terms of Banner operating it. All he does is punch. He doesn't even really blast anything. He just runs in it and uses it as a mech. He doesn't know how to use the weaponry. He just puts it on because that's the best he can do.
At all with Banner using that suit or knowing how to use that suit. That doesn't bother me.
It bothers me a lot more that Pepper vaguely knew how to use the suit.
The bigger question for me is how the suit got in Wakanda.
Not in this film.
I assume he called it. I assume they called it, but they can call it like Tony lets them call it. Like
I would think that
Tony doesn't have it.
I would think Bruce would have authorization to call it if he needed to.
So.
Yeah.
I got to say this too. And there were like many of these moments sprinkled throughout this movie, but this is what makes the movie for me. These little moments. There was that shot of Bruce running alongside all the soldiers running out to the barrier. Mm-hmm. And Okoye just looks at him for a second and gives him like this look, and then little moments like that make the movie for me. Yeah. And there was that moment between those two, and there was no dialogue. It was just Bruce being happy that he's in the suit and running alongside everyone else. And then she just gives him this look, and it's
the biggest amazing. Joy for me in these films, starting with the Avengers on, is how is their first meeting going to be? And what DC tries to do is, they shake hands, they do some stupid joke about the other person that fans might recognize. In these films, they do it like two mutual friends would do. They just go, okay, there's that guy, but they don't really ask too many questions. They just sort of listen to what he says, react to what he says, but they don't know the history. They don't ask the history. They don't make some dumb joke that the fans will know. They just sort of progress. And so to have Okoye looking at Bruce and going like, oh, what's going on here? And then when all the tribes in Black Panther are doing their chants, there's a shot in the background of the Hulkbuster and the banners in there just sort of turning and looking like, what's going on? Or whatever. Yeah. He sort of turns and looks and goes like, this is strange. And then he quickly like sort of pivots back to the front like, well, okay, this is their thing, I guess. I'll just be quiet and respectful again. Like he doesn't want to interfere.
Well, and I love the little moments like between Steve and Thor where it's like, oh, you got a haircut. Oh, I see you copied my beard or whatever. Like I love the little things like that make them feel like they're friends.
This is my friend. Like, he's a tree.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love stuff like that, but then compare that to how flat it is in Batman vs Superman when Wonder Woman shows up to fight Doomsday, and like she shows up and like Superman and Batman have no reaction except to look at each other, and then Superman just goes, "Is she with you?" And Batman's like, "I thought she was with you," and I'm like, "No, first of all, none of that even makes sense because of course." Batman, you know her. You wouldn't think she's with Clark. That makes no sense.
Yeah, you've been researching her.
And secondly, those lines of dialogue do not reveal character. Yeah. They reveal nothing. And Wonder Woman's not a part of it. She's being introduced to these two people, and she's not a part of that exchange. And so it's just, again, credit to the screenwriters here for for Infinity War, because it's like, every character says something that character should say in the situation that they're in, down to like, you know, what is probably my favorite line is Star-Lord saying, "Where is Gamora?" and then Tony Stark says, "Who is Gamora?" and then Drax says, "Why is Gamora?" It makes no sense, but that's 100% what Drax would say at that moment. And like these little things like that, you're absolutely right, John. It's like, these writers know these characters and they don't let a chance go by to explain who they are. And yes, it's assumed that if you're seeing Infinity War, you've seen the other Marvel movies, or at least some of them. But as a screenwriter, you never stop exploring characters through dialogue. And so the big moment is if a character encounters another character, the things they say to each other reveal who they are. And when you get that wrong, there's no character there. So anyway,
it's like Bucky picking up Rocket, and spinning him around and that sort of thing. It was like that was. And I have one more comment about the stuff in Wakanda, very quick, and then I want to talk about the opening scene.
Yes.
But I got to say, I love M'Baku.
Yes, me too.
That guy is awesome, and I'm so glad he survived. When it was like that shot of him, and he was looking and seeing all the other Wakandans like fading away, I was like, oh no, not M'Baku. And then he lived, and I was like, oh yay!
But and he calls T'Challa brother in this, which I thought was just like such a really good moment.
That guy was amazing in Black Panther. Like his whole character, I loved it. Yeah, so I was like, I was glad that they brought him back. And he lived through all of it, so that was great.
Agreed.
Yeah. So like I would say of all the films collectively, the Captain America films, the three of them are my favorite, but the characters that I think I like the most and the world I like the most is probably the Thor.
Okay.
And so, like, basically you kill off two major Thor characters in that scene. One of them who is like a huge part of the MCU in general. Yeah. And I don't know. I liked that Loki went out a hero and Heimdall as well, but I don't know. It felt rushed to me. The thing with Loki felt pretty rushed.
So I've heard people, I just don't recall. How exactly does he go out a hero? Because he attempts to kill Thanos?
Well, no, it wasn't that. For me, it was the fact that he could have easily continued his sham of I'll show you around and I'll work for you, and he could have let them kill Thor, but instead he did give up the cube to save Thor, and then at least tried to fight Thanos as opposed to joining him.
Okay, I guess.
Whether you would call that heroic or not, I think what it is absolutely is character
It was
growth.
heroic for Loki.
Yes.
Right. It's 100% character growth because the Loki from the first Thor, or the Loki from Avengers, or the Loki from Dark World, or the Loki from Ragnarok, although to a lesser extent, wouldn't have done that. It had to be after Ragnarok that Loki does this. And so to me, that's character development. That's what that is.
There was like that moment where Thanos had Thor, and Loki says, "Go ahead, kill him. I don't care." And then I forget, Loki's introducing himself, and he says, "I'm Loki. I'm a god." Blah blah blah. And then he kind of like pauses for a second. He said, "Odin's son." And I think that's when he went, I can't let this happen. And so that's when he gives up the stone and says, "Save my brother." And for Loki, that was when I kind of knew he was going to die. I was like, well, that's it for you, I guess.
Yeah.
Loki was always on my list to die. I just thought there's no place for him in this film. I never thought that he had an application. They had him sort of helping Thor in Ragnarok, begrudgingly so. I just thought like there's no way they would just sort of have him, I don't know. And he's on the ship with the Guardians when they the trailers. So I just thought he's dead.
For Loki, I thought Loki would be a proxy for a character in the story that Thanos takes this other character hostage, essentially, and removes his mouth. Like, he just has nothing where his mouth used to be. And that character is like what you see, what the reader sees the story through. That he's basically the narrator of the whole arc. And I thought that Loki could serve that purpose, that Thanos, instead of killing him, takes him hostage and removes his mouth. But once he kind of was heroic in that scene, I was like, nah, he's going to die.
And I was sort of glad that they didn't try and do more with Loki, because I thought like, oh, they're going to try and give him like a heroic arc, because this guy did try to like take over the world. You can't just,
gloss over that.
You can't gloss over that. So you can't really have a redemptive arc for him, but you can have him at least, accept his, I guess, lineage as a raised son of Odin and brother to Thor, which he does.
Right.
Well,
right.
And I thought Loki was safe simply because I think Kevin Feige knows what he has in Tom Hiddleston. It's one of the best villains in the entire MCU, and one of the best characters in the entire MCU. So I just thought for sure he was safe, just because bankability. Put Loki on something and people will buy it. He's got the horns that everybody loves, and he's got the I thought he was safe for that reason. So
I just thought they killed him.
I still think he's my favorite villain in the MCU still.
Yeah.
No, I still think he's the best.
I like Thanos. Loki's not as threatening as Thanos. I mean, he's got conflict, he has unpredictability, but I think in terms of like a relatable code maybe, and physical threat, I think Thanos overtakes Loki in terms of my favorite villains. Because it's weird, because for a while Loki was bar none the best villain in the MCU, and then you roll around with Black Panther and you've got Killmonger, and it's like, okay, well, while I'm not sort of down with just killing all the white people, I at least understand. And okay, like, you are obviously skilled and driven, and you've thought about this, and you're serious, young man. And
it is definitely the three of them.
And then the very next movie,
absolutely.
he gets knocked out of the spot by Thanos, just like, nope, this is mine, this is my gauntlet, and that's how it is.
For me, it probably is Thanos, Loki, Killmonger, and like maybe Abomination or.
What about the Red Skull?
No, I'd say probably maybe the Dark Elves, whatever his name was, Malekith. He's probably my favorite. Him. They should make.
I thought you were being serious when you said Abomination.
They should make a Malekith and Abomination.
Oh God,
buddy comedy.
Why do you like that guy?
I delivered it too deadpan, but if you could have seen my face, you would have known.
Oh man. I gotta say too, real quick, like the biggest oh my God moment of that whole movie was the fucking Red Skull showing up.
I know.
I was like, holy shit, you're alive.
Yeah.
Well, they pulled a bait and switch on us too, because when they got to that planet, you were supposed to think it was like Lady Death, because it was like this hooded, ghostly figure. And it was like, oh, here we go. And then it was like, it was just the Red Skull, and it was like, what? Because I always assumed he was alive, but I was like, I will never see this guy again. You know,
exactly.
They're dropping that plot.
I thought
it's
maybe
like the
he was
real
on
Mandarin or something at this point. You know?
I thought maybe he was on some like prison colony, but he turned on. He's like, I am cursed to know all who come here. Like, dude, he's looking. He's all but looking at the camera like, kill me.
No.
and notably, it's not. I don't want to toot my own horn, but did anyone else know that it wasn't Hugo Weaving? Like as soon as he spoke,
I did about half. Not as soon as he spoke. No,
I knew
like halfway through
quickly,
the scene,
but not immediately.
A couple of sentences in, I was like, that is not Hugo Weaving. Because the whole time I thought, man, how many bags of money did they have to give that guy? Because he was like, fuck
he was not
these
having
movies.
it.
I hate this.
Yeah.
And I thought, your whole career is built on fantasy sci-fi. I wouldn't speak too loudly about this. And then they have him back, and I thought, well, I guess he had lunch with Kevin Feige and everything's cool. And then about like the third time he speaks, I thought, that's not him. And then it comes out that it's Ross Marquand. It's not only not Hugo Weaving, it's the guy from The Walking Dead who does all the impressions that you see on YouTube. Well, and you're like, that's hilarious.
Before the voice, I recognized it by the face. I knew that wasn't Hugo Weaving's face.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you knew it was Ross Marquand by the.
No! I didn't know who it was. I just knew it wasn't Hugo Weaving.
I know Ross.
I can see through that red skull face.
I know his cheekbones.
Those ain't his.
Can we? I really want to move on to the future. If we're just in case we. I just want to say, obviously, we can get out of the way the same thoughts that everyone else is having, which is like, or from a business standpoint. All right, well, there's been a Spider-Man sequel confirmed. There's a Guardians 3 confirmed, and there's obviously Black Panther 2, and presumably Strange and other heroes. So these Ash, at the end of the film, the Ash is happening, which, like I said, like you said, John, was haunting. Like you see T'Challa walking over to Okoye and saying, Okoye, get up, this is no place to die. And you think
the most ironic thing he could say in that
she's going to turn to Ash, and then because he's not even in the frame. And so you're like, oh, here it comes. Yeah. And then like you see all that's in frame is like his hand. And then his hand, his is mostly off screen, but his hand goes, and she's like, what? And the theater is like, oh my God. Like,
everyone in my theater was freaking out when he died.
So the Guardian, everyone goes, but I think we can all probably agree that watching Spider-Man die, I will say, fucked me up.
So when I saw that, first of all, I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredibly like dark, and I am so sad right now.
Yeah.
But I am simultaneously.
We all knew a moment like that was coming in some way between Tony and Peter. One of them was going to be
sure, exactly. I was so thankful and also a little bit sad that they didn't do this, but I'm thankful that they I'm sad that they didn't, but I'm thankful that they didn't.
Yeah.
Is that during that, like Peter dying or whatever, I was like, okay, if they even so much as mention Uncle Ben or Aunt May in this scene, I am gonna cry my eyes out, because I thought for sure 100% it was gonna be like he was gonna tell Tony to check on Aunt May or something, or it was going to be him saying something about Uncle Ben, and I was like, I'm losing it. This is it for me. But they didn't, and I'm thankful that they didn't. I also wish they did, because I'm
glad they didn't.
I'm glad they didn't.
I am too.
I'm glad, because that would have felt contrived to me. I liked that in that moment he's literally against the wall and he's just like, I'm dying, and like nothing else is going through his head. He can't even think rationally. It's just pleading and death.
The way death is treated in this film is a very mature treatment of death on screen. In movies sometimes it's not really a throwaway, but it's more of like it's treated lighter because of the rating. And I was telling people, and I think I said this on Facebook, like, because people are taking their kids to this because it's Marvel and it's PG-13. And so, and while there's no gore, there's not like an excessive amount of blood, they all turn to ash. I'm sure that was a very calculated decision, in terms of the MPAA and a general
audience. What if they
just
turned to blood? What if it was blood?
If it was, well, but so they can get away with that because it's not like blood or gore. It's just ash. But in terms of, I said this film is what I would categorize as psychologically graphic. Yeah, there's no blood, there's no gore, there's no like explicitly violent deaths, but to watch a 16-year-old kid beg for his life and to have an adult who feels responsible for him, who is responsible for his presence there, almost totally, trying to comfort him and telling him like, because Stark is, he's like, Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good, and he's telling him this is some Saving Private Ryan shit. This is some this is an R-rated treatment of death where you're telling a person who you're certain is going to die, you're just looking at them going like, it's okay, you're fine. And I was like, Jesus Christ, and that was hard to take, because not only are you telling a 16-year-old kid it's fine so that he doesn't realize he's dying, but a 16-year-old is dying on screen in front of you and he is scared. And I'm getting emotional thinking about it right now, because more than I did in the movie, because that was really hard for me to watch.
Well, and the difference with Peter is that he knows something is wrong because of the spider sense. All these other characters go fairly quickly, but he can tell immediately that something is not right.
I didn't even think about that.
And he knows,
Yeah.
And he survives the snap in the comics, and the spider sense goes crazy because half the people in the universe just died.
Oh my God.
It was incredibly difficult to watch, but
absolutely necessary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just real quick, think about in this sense. When you want to pile on Tony Stark's guilt, that did because I thought he would die. I thought he was going to die in this film, but then this was all my death predictions were dependent upon the Thanos storyline ending or concluding. So when you throw that out the window, if there's still Thanos to deal with in the future, Stark must live, because in token Stark fashion, he must survive and experience the guilt of the people who didn't. And what character is more connected to him in a father-son type dynamic than Peter Parker? Like, that's his whole thing in Civil War. Everyone's like, God, Tony, this kid's 16. What's he doing here? And in Homecoming, he feels protective of him in that same way. And in this one, he's like, he's on a spaceship. He shouldn't be here. I tried to get rid of him. I tried to keep him safe. It didn't work, and now he's dying. And so in terms of the last death, Tony Stark feels mostly, if not totally, responsible for this kid who not only had potential as a hero, but just potential as a brilliant person. And I guarantee you, in terms of everything else that's going on, he's thinking, what am I going to tell Aunt May if I ever get back if she's even alive? What am I going to tell her? How do I explain to her that her nephew's dead?
Right. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think, everything post snap, we'll call it, was incredibly difficult to watch. But I think, and I'll catch all the flag for this, but I think it's one of the downsides of being a movie buff and caring about following the film news is that literally like the day before I heard Kevin Feige say, oh, Spider-Man 2 is going to be a globe-trotting adventure. And I'm so the whole time, as difficult as all of this is to watch, there's always in the back of my mind, like the highest grossing Marvel movie of all time, Black Panther, is really going to be dead. Like Spider-Man's actually dead.
There's theories. And so there's definitely theories about this that we can get into, but it's definitely sort of, I agree. If you follow this at all like we do, you know that all these sequels are confirmed. It was the same thing with Winter Soldier. They're shooting Nick Fury. He's not dead. Samuel L. Jackson signed on for like 5 more movies. He's not out of the story. But there's a couple things. So recently I've sort of come to peace with the fact that you could spoil a film for me, but it really is all in the execution of the story elements that really makes it. You could have told me the end of this film and I would have been pissed at you. I would have legitimately not talked to you ever again. I would have been really angry, but I would have still said, you know what? I need to see it in context before I know how I feel about it. So all that said, knowing that these people will somehow live, it's like, well, one, okay, so I know the information. There's nothing I can do about that. That's not their fault. And 2, I don't know how they'll come back. 3, if you really want to break it down, we don't know that they will. Some people are saying, okay, those films are happening, but So with the Guardians, so obviously most of the Guardians are coming back. Rocket's alive.
Yeah.
So most people are saying at least Quill, Drax, Groot come back. Mantis.
Sure.
Because there's a Guardians 3.
Yeah.
There's theories about Gamora. Will she come back? She was killed pre-snap, so does she count? I think she does come back because she was killed in pursuit of an Infinity Stone. I think there's some Soul Stone stuff that can happen that'll bring her back. Some Adam Warlock Soul Realm stuff.
Yeah, I was just about to say. I think she's gonna be
so
Adam
there's
Warlock.
probably that. Yeah. And so Black Panther. Okay, T'Challa will probably come back. Although, what if he doesn't? Some people are saying Shuri is going to be the new Black Panther, or maybe not. What's his face?
M'Baku.
Maybe not. Maybe so. Probably Shuri. Female, it's good on paper. She's smart. She's capable. She probably already has a suit somewhere. She survived, presumably. We don't see her ashed up, so maybe she survives. Some people are saying there could be a Black Panther too, just with her in the role. Some people are saying the same thing about Spider-Man. There's probably a Spider-Man too, but I bet it's Miles Morales because they hint at him with Donald Glover's nephew, him making casual reference to a nephew of his. Yeah. So they'll probably just do Miles Morales, so they might not bring back these characters. I don't subscribe to these theories. I definitely think Gamora's coming back. I definitely think she's coming back and in some way is kind of messed up from the Soul Realm and introducing Adam Warlock a little bit. Some people are saying the Soul Realm, I think, is a place you can visit similar to Otherworld in Dragon Ball Z, where you can go there and you can get out. It's not just like the afterlife. It's a place you can actually travel to. It's just hard to escape, but it's possible. I don't know about all that. I'm just saying from a narrative sense, I see her escaping because Quill can't just not have his love interest absent from the third film. The other two films, Black Panther and Spider-Man, yes, it's possible you could carry on the franchise with other characters. It's a little early to take T'Challa and Peter Parker out of those characters' masks, especially since they are so well liked by audiences. Like, there's no way, like, they could. Shuri's well liked, sure, but no one knows Miles Morales. Now, that is a thing I believe Sony would do, but I just don't think they're going to take Tom Holland and Chadwick Boseman out of the costumes just because of the events of this film.
No.
So, following that logic, who else could be brought back? Presumably everybody. But the question is, how will it happen? And are we going to be okay with how it happens?
So I think, I agree. I think that Loki and Heimdall stay dead. I think that Gamora comes back. Yes. I think that all of the people... Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me say one thing real quick, because I think this is probably the last time that Loki will be talked about. I got to say, the way that he died... It was I don't know. It was clear that he died.
Yes.
It was like, and it was extremely graphic. I felt.
Yes.
Oh my God. You
literally saw a man being choked to death, and then there was like a snap, and then his body falls, and he's lifeless completely.
Yes.
And it's like, oh my God! And then they even had that line where he's like, "No resurrections this time." Yeah. And it was like, oh my God. Yeah.
Thanos made it clear to the audience,
for sure
like,
dead. Yeah.
This motherfucker is gone.
Yeah, he's done. Yeah. But anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
No, but I do think he's gone. I think Heimdall's gone. I think that Gamora will come back. I don't know how. I think speculation can run wild here, but the movie doesn't really give us very many or really any clue as to how she could come back. And all of the Snap people. Well, let's talk about Vision. I think Vision is probably dead too.
I think so. Although somebody pointed out, they're pretty sure that Shuri, what she was doing at the end there before I think it was Proxima Midnight or maybe just one of the other lackeys. Mm-hmm. Like, what is she? Because some people thought when she was pushing all the buttons, they're like, "Oh, she's gonna get in a suit," and then she doesn't. I was like, I don't know what she's doing. I thought at the time she's trying to get the stone out of him real quick and fails. Some people are saying she's backing that shit up. She backed up Vision's consciousness basically somewhere,
could be.
So that at least his mind could survive. But he's effectively just going to come back as smarter Jarvis.
Yeah,
he cannot be Vision anymore.
Right. I'd almost rather him be dead.
I'm not sure yet. I don't know how I feel about that yet. I could take it either way. It just depends on what they need for the story to happen. But I think it's effective if he's dead because Scarlet Witch will lose him.
Yeah.
But I mean, assuming she comes back, I'm sure she does. But it could also be just as heartbreaking that he's there, but not really.
Yeah. I think we watched him die twice. I think he'll stay dead. At least the Vision as we know Vision is dead, right? I
think Bettany's done just because he's had an arc as Jarvis, Vision, and he's come full circle. And then now he's also like, to have him come back and be an AI again. You've got Friday, you have Shuri. You really don't need Jarvis. You don't need smarter Jarvis. Like, I just think it's better if he's gone.
Right. I mean, theoretically, you could put him in a somewhat human body and let him and Wanda ride off into the sunset, but I don't think they're going to go that route either.
He could be that solid color Vision.
Yes.
From the 90s.
Yes, he could be
the white gold Vision.
That'd be great.
When you saw his body, that's kind of what I thought they were referencing was when he died, he lost all his color or whatever.
Yep. But I do think Vision, as we know Vision, is dead. And then all of the post-snap deaths, I think, are reversible. I even hesitate to call them death, simply because it's more like a cease of existence. Which I guess is the definition of death, but it's more like just completely wiped, right? So for me, it's like all of that is completely reversible. I'm with you, Hooper. I don't think that they'll pull in Miles Morales. I don't think they're going to do anything with Shuri. I don't think that they're going to do anything with Wong instead of Doctor Strange. Like, Wong's not going to be the next star of Doctor Strange.
No,
Wong, if Wong is even alive.
No, Wong is alive.
Do we know that?
No, we don't. Connor does.
Got it.
Because he is an exposition machine. There's no way they're going to kill a guy who knows that much stuff about mystic arts.
True.
Especially if there's anyone who can vaguely explain why Doctor Strange would know that this was the way to go, it's Wong. So they're not going to roll up to the Sanctum and be like, oh, I guess Wong died too. He'll be there.
Right.
And he will open up some textbooks and explain some stuff.
True. And I think that the Guardians that went will obviously come back. I think Chris Pratt's too big of a star to kill off. I think that James Gunn has a very particular vision for that.
Yes.
And he won't allow or stand for that being ripped from him, regardless of how much, input he's had in the dialogue in this film. I just don't think he's going to be like, oh, okay, Guardians 3, the only person is Rocket. And like, I don't think that's ever going to happen. So, having said that, with the future, I feel like what we're in for is, I feel like it's going to be, I hesitate to say something like, Doctor Strange or Inception level of like weird reality bending. But I think that we're going to end up with something a little more. And again, this is coming from somebody that has not read the source material, but I feel like what we're in for is something that's a little more reality bending, in that people who are dead may show up and people who have been dead may show back up, and we may see different time periods. So maybe we'll do flashbacks to this, but something's different about it, or what I mean. Like, I feel like something. Yeah.
Here's what I don't want.
Yeah.
I don't want a Back to the Future 2 style rewriting of the present. I don't want them to, because some people, there's set photos. And someone said there's a set photo. Do y'all mind if I talk about this? Just not.
I've already heard about this.
Screw the viewers, but I mean,
well, tell
Dustin,
me.
do you mind if I? Okay.
No, tell me.
Okay, so there's set photos of Chris Evans in his original Captain America suit in New York, like the battle, like the first.
The crappy one. The crappy one.
Okay, yeah.
So there are some people who are saying Time Stone, first Avengers, whatever. So there is a theory that there is time travel involved in the next film and some sort of rewriting of history. So while they could do that, I think that'd be really hacky to sort of just retcon the events of this film for time travel. I think they're better than that. Two, someone else said, they point out an interview that the Russos gave. So in Civil War, the first time you see Tony Stark is at a stage. He's given essentially a TED talk. He's giving a talk to all these students. He's going to fund all their projects. And he introduces the scene with this projection technology with the acronym is BARF. And it is like he's replaying the last time he saw his parents, and they have really good facial technology of a young Robert Downey Jr. It's really impressive, actually. But that is not used for the rest of Civil War. The Russos said we introduced that tech for a very specific reason. So some people are saying that's just a recreation of the Battle of New York so that Stark can look for clues on how to defeat Thanos. So it's sort of like a mixed interpretation of those set photos. There's other set photos, someone told me, Dustin, it might have been you, of Stark and Hank Pym, Michael Douglas.
Oh, maybe. No, I didn't know about that.
Oh, sorry. Well, the grayer Tony Stark.
No.
I don't know if they meant grayer like 70 or just, 60 Tony Stark. Sure. But like time having passed, Stark working on, because there's some working theory that his wife, that Michelle Pfeiffer's an Ant-Man and the Wasp. Everyone knows that. She's playing his wife. So obviously she escapes from the quantum realm. So some people are saying she comes back from the quantum realm. She's learned some stuff about time travel, and Pym and Stark have a powwow about it, and they sort of find their own way into this time stuff. I'm very hesitant to just go, oh, cool, time travel, because it has the potential just to be so hacky with how easily they fix things.
Sure.
What is clear to point out at the end of this film is that the surviving characters are largely the main Avengers cast, with the exception of Rocket, Rhodey, in terms of the Avengers, not people who are also alive during the events of the film Avengers. Rhodey,
M'Baku.
Rocket, M'Baku.
Okoye.
So it's clear that, especially if you follow the business end a little bit, but also just when you think about 10 years of movies, something is going to happen to where the original Avengers will somehow die or be retired in favor of the new Avengers. So the plot will obviously somehow, I really want them to be careful. I'm sure they were careful about how you kill off Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, Bruce Banner, Thor, and Hawkeye, and bring on everyone you just killed in a way that makes sense to me. It doesn't just feel like these people are done and these people are beginning business, in a business sense.
Sure.
I'm sure they're careful with it, but I really am apprehensive about how they do that, because I just don't want it to feel like, okay, these guys are done, these guys are here, and I'm Korg, and this is Make, and I just
big
I want
pile
them
of rocks waving at you.
Make, you're alive. I want them to be careful about how they do that, because I just really don't want it to seem, hackneyed and dumb and stupid.
Sure.
Real quick, an aside. I didn't like that they never addressed what happened to those fucking characters.
Which ones?
Yeah.
Korg and Valkyrie and some of those other characters.
So I have thoughts on that. So again, this is based off someone else's theory. Some people think, oh, they probably sent off a ship. They went Thanos' ship. They maybe sent an escape pod, or they were off on another mission.
One of the Russos came out like today and said essentially that.
That's dumb.
I agree.
That's stupid.
It's just dumb. That could have been a throwaway line to address what happened.
You should have shown a pod escape in a film.
Yeah.
You should have had Thanos be like, what's that? Oh, it's an escape pod. It's okay. We're only going to kill. Because some people say Thanos probably, I think maybe Thor says something about half of Asgard is dead. So Thanos, assumingly, if you go by that logic, only killed half of them. But why don't you show any survivors then? Why don't you show half of them in a line?
Say something, yeah,
and shoot them off in a pod and go, maybe Korg's on there, maybe Valkyrie's on there, or show them. Why not just show them on there so we have some hope?
You could have had a line that literally said Korg and Valkyrie were looking after the escapees, refugees, what have you.
So the fact that they don't, it's okay. So the fact they don't address it, what that comes before the Russo's explanation, that reads to me as we just don't have time for these characters and they're dead.
Yeah.
And that's it. So I just assumed they were dead. Now, again, like when you come down to like, well, who's going to replace who? Like, well, if Valkyrie's alive, is she going to be the new Thor? You know, I doubt that Korg makes it. That would be, you know, I don't know. I don't know.
I have a sneaky suspicion Thor will survive all this.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think I don't think it's going to be a clean swap. In other words, I don't think it's going to be like Thor for, you know, Bucky's life and you know Spider-Man for. I don't think it's gonna fall that way. I think that you know. I think Thor will survive. I think that we will. So I've always thought that we were going to lose Steve Rogers and Tony Stark.
Yeah. I still think that'll happen.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing that they'll both bite it in one movie. I just have a hard time believing that.
They will.
But I do think that Steve Rogers will go. I think that that's the culmination of his character, and I think that it makes sense for Robert Downey Jr. to go, and for Tony Stark to go, but I just have a hard time believing that they'll do both in one movie. I could be wrong.
If they get rid of Stark without killing him, he will be effectively, you know, appoint a replacement, and he will essentially develop tech. But he will uphold his promise to Pepper to not get personally involved in these things.
Yes.
But even if he puts his guilt behind him and his need to get involved behind him, I just have a hard time believing that he would not jump in a suit and help.
Yeah.
So they have to, in a way.
Who's to say he can't, though?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny because if you read online, everyone's like, his contract is up. Like, his contract ended several movies ago, and he just goes on like you pay me, I'm going to be in this one movie type of deal.
Yeah.
He did that for Homecoming. He's doing that for Civil War. He did that. Like, it's like, so I think there's no reason why he has to just stop being in the movies as Iron Man.
Contracts are unreliable means of information anyway, because like, you know, if we're saying, oh, well, Mark Ruffalo's, you know, still contracted for 3 movies, then it's like, yeah, but what that means is they can use you, not that they are contractually obligated to use you. So they could pull him in for flashbacks and kill him, even though he's contracted for 3 movies. So just because he still has time on his contract doesn't mean he's going to live. And likewise, just because you don't have time on your contract doesn't mean you're going to die, because, like you said, Robert Downey Jr. didn't die.
Hugo Weaving had a contract too.
Exactly. This is 100% true.
From a character standpoint,
not the
in terms of the two of them dying, I think of the two of them who would die in the next movie, Steve Rogers, I agree, Dustin, is the sure bet. I think for Tony Stark, so there's still the whole line about the sacrifice play for Tony Stark. Yeah. I think that there's a chance that he would do that to save Cap.
Yeah.
But there's a much greater chance he survives, because in a way, it would almost be a disservice to his arc for Stark to be killed in action. Because his whole arc, at least if they're continuing. So what they could, so Iron Man 3, right? It ends with the whole time Pepper's like, give this up. He blows up the suits. And then in Civil War, he alludes that they broke up because he couldn't stop with the suits. And I thought, that's stupid. That's dumb of her to ask him. That's stupid. That's dumb. And I hate it. And I still do hate it. It doesn't make me like Pepper Potts that she wants him to give up. He's on the space. She's like, Tony, get back here right now. And he's nice about it. He's like, Pepper, I don't know what to tell you. I would have been like, listen, bitch, I have a real chance to help. And you're going to shut the fuck up about it, because this is bigger than you and me. I know you want me to quit my suits, and I'm not going to fucking do it. So shut up and let me do my thing. But
I just want the Hooper version of Iron Man.
But they very consciously continued Pepper wanting him to stop. And I can only think the reason they do that is that he must choose to stop. He can't have the decision made for him by his death.
Yes.
Because then he doesn't really have an arc. He has like a hero's arc, that dying for a cause. But he can accomplish that and survive and have a personal arc by choosing to be done with this sort of direct involvement in hero business, especially if he appoints a competent successor.
Well, and they talk about that in Infinity War, like you were saying. But there's that whole scene with him and Pepper in the park where she's like, "You did that," and pointing to his chest.
Yep.
Like, you don't have to do that.
Yep.
And so the whole setup for me is you don't have to.
Yeah.
So isn't the culmination of his character then choosing not to? And I think, I agree. I think,
and I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I don't think that the Iron Man is a foregone, dead character.
But I will say my Walking Dead sense went off when he was like, I pictured you having a baby. And I was like, you're going to die, dude. You're going to die for real.
Yeah.
But I just think for Pepper's sake, they're not going to invest in the relationship with Pepper if he dies. Like, for me, they don't get her back with him at the end of Spider-Man, and they don't have her in this film if they're going to kill Tony Stark. I think
they could kill Pepper.
No, I don't think they'll kill Pepper either, because for them, Tony Stark's story is about to conclude. If Pepper's in the picture, that tells me that his story will end happily with her, and he needs to accept that he needs to be done and have a normal life, because his guilt, he needs to put his guilt to rest. He needs to be able to say, I did the best I could to help and to do all this stuff, and I'll continue to help whoever is willing to take up the mantle. But I'm 50 something years old. I can't be putting myself on the line like this, and I feel secure that future conflict can be handled by somebody more capable physically.
I think you can have your cake and eat it too, in terms of him having his happy ending with Pepper and her dying. And I think that when they make it back to Earth for the next Avengers, she's one of the ones that has died with the snap of the fingers. So Tony gets to live life without her, and then whatever's reversed at the end that brings her back, he gets to then have his happy ending because he's experienced her death.
He's experienced life without her, and he's realized how much he needs her. So he's then motivated to change because he understands that without 100%. Pepper, my life is not worth living.
In your honor, essentially, instead of like, well, she died and she wanted this, so I'm going to do this. Instead, it's like, you died, I'm going to give you this. Now you're alive, I'm still giving you this in your honor, even though you're still alive.
In a way, too, it doesn't make sense. If Pepper survives, he's still motivated by it's almost like he's still picking his friends over her. Like, I'm obsessing about bringing everyone back because everyone died. Yeah. If Pepper is part of the dead, you're right. It's more for him going, no, I have to fix this. I have to fix this. Like, that's just one extra motivating factor for him. Yeah. I think, oh God, is there anything else to speculate about before we wrap up? I just want to, I'm just trying to think of where everyone is geographically. The fact that Stark is with Nebula is very important, obviously, to the next film. How and if he gets back to Earth, how exactly that happens. I think, I think that here's two more things. I think two people on my dead list for this film that didn't happen, but I'm still not ruling out for the next film, are Banner and Black Widow. Yeah. Their story has zero closure in this film. They maybe had shot some scenes or some looks for the teaser I thought I saw, but in terms of them having any kind of closure, there's none in this film. Their story needs closure. And so I think that is to come in Avengers 4. After that, I just think they're done with Hulk. I think Hulk has to die. At this point, I really don't know how, because he has to have his moment with Thanos and he has to succeed, but he also, I think, has to be done. Maybe he's not. I don't know. I just, for the first time at the end of these films, I just genuinely don't know what they're going to do. And I like that feeling. I don't see Banner and Natasha riding off into the sunset. I think if you leave too many people on Earth who have powers and abilities to help, I think that's too many opportunities for a hacky film that will ultimately ruin their arc for me. If they come back like 3 films later, like, hey, Banner's back, everyone. I would rather him sort of hang it up, and the only way he can hang it up,
showing up on the Next Generation.
If I don't think Banner hangs, I just don't know how this will end. For the two of them, I just thought that if one died, the other would die. I thought they would die together.
I think the only other thing to sort of speculate on, and there's really nothing to go on, but keep in mind there are still 3 wild cards to this whole next film, and those 3 wild cards are Ant-Man, who has to be in this in some way.
Yes.
And so we talked earlier. I think probably the last 5 minutes of Ant-Man is probably going to be someone or
turning
some
to
people
ash.
disappearing.
Yeah.
And it probably won't be Paul Rudd. And so you've got him.
Yeah.
So he's a wild card. You also have Hawkeye. We don't know where. I mean, we know where he is, but we don't know where he is.
Yeah.
And
we know his family's probably dead.
Right.
Oh, dude, you're right.
We know that half of his family is probably dead anyway.
Right.
And so you have Hawkeye, and then the last wild card is Captain Marvel, and it's way too early to speculate anything on Captain Marvel because we haven't even seen her solo film yet.
Yeah.
Which is a prequel set prior to the first Iron Man.
Did you notice that Lee Pace is among the cast list?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Greg too.
That means Ronan the Accuser is part of this film.
Yeah.
Do you ever think you'd see that guy again, Dustin?
I did not. I really thought I wouldn't, and I really hoped I wouldn't.
They're doing a Malekith prequel next, I think.
Oh, I hope. Oh, please.
Abomination will
Abomination.
be in it.
Oh,
it's called Darren Cross the Early Years.
Oh, and please put Whiplash in it. Please.
Whiplash.
I need Whiplash. But
Whiplash is the worst.
Whiplash is one of the worst. Yeah,
You can make
Whiplash,
God bleed.
Whiplash, Ronan
might be even worse than the Dark Elf.
Yeah,
because he's like so extravagant and memorable in all the wrong ways.
Does
People
Justin
will
Hammer
cease to
count as a
believe in
villain?
him.
I don't know.
I love Justin Hammer.
But
I thought not as a villain, but as a character,
Right.
He wasn't threatening in the least.
Yeah.
Anthony.
At the end of the day, we've got 3 wild cards. We don't know where they're going to fit into this big tapestry, but they have to fit in somewhere.
And the Wasp.
Third one.
And the Wasp, but she may disappear. I think of the 2 of them, she would be the one to disappear, but I don't know that she will. But it makes sense, right, that at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, where you're like, wow, the Wasp, you're really coming into your own. You're a superhero now. And then, boom, she's gone, right? That makes sense. So
I see Hank Pym fading away.
See,
Yeah, I
here's
think
the
so, too.
I don't know if I do, because if the set photos are true with Hank Pym and Tony Stark, then he survives.
that's true.
But I do think that I think that Bobby Cannavale, what's her face, his ex-wife and his daughter, I think they all disappear, because I think once you mention Hawkeye's family disappearing, for the two for Rudd, he probably would have jumped to the cause no matter what. But for the 2 guys who took plea deals because this was too hard on their families, they need a real reason to get involved again. And I think if both of them lose their families, they're like, well, we got to do something. We need to help.
Right.
We need to fix this. So I think you have a scene. I think you have a scene where Paul Rudd's with his family, and they're having some birthday party or they're at some recital, and they all just disappear. And I think Hawkeye's family the same. I think Linda Cardellini disappears, and his kids. I think he's holding his baby kid, and that kid just vanishes.
But what about Michael Pena?
Oh,
What?
God, stop. Luis.
What about who? Oh,
Michael Pena.
I think Michael Pena disappears. I think he
And
does.
Happy Hogan. We don't even know.
I think Hogan. I think
not
I
so
think
happy
lots
anymore.
of people,
Not so happy.
not so happy.
Happy Hogan.
So
what about the Netflix guys? No one cares.
No one cares.
No one cares.
God, no one cares.
Who was it? I think it was Kevin Feige recently said, I don't envy them trying to figure out how to write after this. Or it was one of the Russos, I think.
He's like, I don't care.
I think it was one
care.
of the Russos who was like, I don't envy them. And I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'll say this about how
died.
this all ends. I think I might see it. I don't know. I think it's going to end a little differently. But I think it'll end similar to the comics and play out there. But I don't think Thanos will die.
Some people are saying that, because I think in the comics, like Thanos is like, I think they basically his memory gets wiped and he's just a farmer somewhere.
Yeah, well, he gets the gauntlet taken away, and then he's essentially kind of like the Gauntlet in the comics, like almost like poisons his thinking. Mm-hmm. Like he's more like he is in this movie, but then when he has the Gauntlet on, it amplifies all of these emotions, and he becomes extremely cocky and arrogant and power hungry and all these sort of things, and that's what leads to his downfall. And so by the time that he loses, he's like a changed person in a sense. Right. And that's what like that shot of him at the end of this film was like referencing that bit as a farmer where he was like, right, I'm cool now. Obviously he's not cool at the end of that movie.
Right. Well, it's also a callback to like what he says he's going to do when he succeeds. He's like, I'm going to watch the sunrise on home, and that's just what I'm going to do.
I think it's just going to be revealed that Thanos is really just an actor who's going by Thanos, but he's not the real Thanos.
Stop it, Dustin. He just pulls off a mask and it's Trevor Slattery.
Oh my God,
I'm out of prison.
or maybe Thanos is just actually Stan Lee's daughter who's just trying to get all of his money and power.
No,
I didn't know that anyone would be hurt.
They lied to me.
They lied to me.
I love that bit where they go, why didn't you push the panic button, Trevor? I panicked, but I handled it. Well, and then he like cracks open a beer right after that.
Yeah.
I panicked.
Okay, Trevor, what'd you tell him?
Yeah.
Nothing? You didn't tell me anything. No, I didn't tell him anything. Why'd you hit the panic button? Well, I panicked, but then I handled it. Okay. Any final thoughts on Infinity War? I just must say, like, I just think that considering all they had to pull off, I think this movie is fucking incredible.
It's a testament to the just the long-term planning here at Marvel. I think that it is absolutely ridiculous that they were able to juggle what they were able to juggle. And I think there's really nothing in film history that has accomplished what they've accomplished here.
John?
Same. And I got to say, Doctor Strange was an OG.
He was.
I love what he was like the MVP of this whole movie. I feel
he was so much more likable in this film than he was in his solo. His solo film's fine, but like he's so much better in this movie.
He got a chance to spread his wings in this. I feel like
he did, and he also. I think that. I really think that obviously this is a no-brainer, but like for him, this is the outcome he foresaw. So of anyone who knows what's going on, Doctor Strange knows that this is how they win. Yeah. And he knows that he basically tries to intimate to Tony, like, this is the only way, like, you needed to survive because you're going to figure this out. And it's one last problem, because Tony's big problem through all these films, also in a pride sense, is my mind can fix this. Yeah, this is Tony's last like application of his intellect is I'm gonna figure this out because like I've got to, and for Strange to have foreseen for a guy who says I'm gonna protect the stone at all costs, fuck you, fuck Peter Parker, for him to go, no, don't kill Tony Stark, take the stone. That's like, what are you playing at? And it's because he knows, he says it. This was the only way. Yeah. The only way I saw, in other words, that we win is to give him the stone, and then things will happen. But I'm not going to tell you because I'm disappearing.
Right.
But, I gotta go.
I gotta go, man. Time's short. But I'm hopeful for the next film because I'm gonna, they're gonna figure it out. Tony's gonna figure it out. Him and Steve will have a chance to put their different, because in this film again, they don't ever meet. They're never in the same place. No. So you do have, I thought a lot in certain ways about the first Harry Potter here. You have people who are scattered, who are operating independent of each other. And then you have the villain who seemingly either, in this case succeeds, and Harry Potter gains the big upper hand at the end. And then you're going to have this movie that hopefully, unlike Deathly Hallows Part 2, at least from my point of view, isn't just like a giant third act. You're going to have people coming together and having an emotional catharsis with, like, in the case of Cap and Tony, but you're going to have them figure it out and come together and organize and defeat the villain. And maybe it'll cost them something, but I'm ready because I'm invested and I want them to succeed. I'm ready. I'm ready to see it. I'm so happy we don't have to wait 3 years for the next Avengers film. I'm so happy it'll be next year.
Yeah.
All
And
of
I'm
us,
also glad that the next two films take place before this. So
yes,
literally when we
I'm-
come back
I'm-
to this set of events, it'll be
Yeah.
picking up right where we left
exactly.
off. So.
Right.
I'm very happy about that, and I just think that the fact that all three of us during Avengers 4's theater run, all three of us will turn 30. I just think that's a fantastic way.
Thank you, Hooper.
At least for me,
Wow.
to cap off our 20s is for this story to be concluded. I think that we've all spent the past.
I will not
10
be 30
Yes,
when this comes out.
I said during the theater run.
Oh, during the theater run. Okay.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah.
But like,
True.
I will be.
John splitting hairs over there trying
I
to.
am the youngest, sir.
I will be
Trying to
very, very newly 30 when this film comes out, and then Dustin, and then John.
Yeah.
But like, I just think like for me at least, it's really, really, really like serendipitous that on my 30th birthday, I'm going to be watching the culmination of 10 years of my movie going experience, and that I never would have foreseen coming. And this all for me, in terms of my love for comic book films, all began when I was 13 years old with the first Spider-Man film. And that love carried on over into the MCU. And now, 17 years after that, I'll see just this incredible display before me. And I'm just going to sit there and think like, oh my God, I could never have imagined this when I first
You're going to be like Thanos on the farm.
Yeah, exactly. I just
smiling.
Yeah, I will be. I will be. I was just so pleased.
Hooper's just going to turn to ash in the theater.
I will.
Hooper's going to be like, Steve?
It'll be a peaceful ash, but
Yeah.
Don't say that.
Steve?
Yeah, it'll be peaceful. It'll be more like Luke Skywalker at the end of the Last Jedi, which is so much like the polar opposite effectiveness of how the ash was handled in this film was Luke Skywalker disappearing. Like, okay.
It's not funny to me
kills
because,
you now. Okay,
because they're owned by the same company, but I feel like they couldn't be managed more differently. I love the way that they're managing Marvel.
No, nobody was having Sorry, I had to really stop myself from wording it a certain way. Nobody was having a more satisfying weekend than Kevin Feige, just knowing how many lives he turned upside down with this movie. Yeah. So Kevin Feige.
I like to think he walked around his house with like an Infinity Gauntlet that he bought at like Target, almost like
absolutely
the Hulk hands Infinity Gauntlet. He's like, oh,
Yep.
And he doesn't even say anything. He just like makes noise,
Yeah.
He's like, in time.
He just sets up Star Wars action figures on his mantle and just knocks them off with the glove.
He just smashes them with the glove.
Ike Perlmutter. He's like, take that, Ike. Oh.
Well, you guys, this was a treat to have everybody on for this.
Totally.
Oh crap! I need to go in like a couple minutes. Let me do this real quick. Sorry. Guys, anyone watching on YouTube, this is our last YouTube video.
What? Our YouTube is turning to ash.
It's turning to ash. This is our last YouTube video for the foreseeable future. The main thing that's going on here really is Dustin and I are the HooperCast we've got a Patreon now. And here's the deal. So with most Patreons, other people you might follow, they're like, hey, I've got so many subscribers. Here's a Patreon so I can do more. So Dustin and I will recognize that we don't have millions of subscribers. But just because
I think there are more actual Avengers at this point than there are people watching our show. There might be more members of the Guardians of the Galaxy than there are watching our show.
So with that in mind, we love doing the show and we're going to keep doing the show. But I can't cut these video reviews anymore. It's a lot of work and I have lots of other things that I do with my time that are much more important than this show. This show, as you all know, and John, of course, and Dustin obviously knows, this show was essentially a way for Dustin and I to talk about movies every week.
Yeah.
And that's the core of what this show always was. And it's what we want to hold on to. And and that was a very loose structure, kind of away from a more defined one, like with people having new releases all the time. This was just me and Dustin saying, here's what I saw this week, and I really liked it. Or did you see this in the news? And that's always what it was. Yeah. And so considering we don't have like a gigantic following, we want to keep the show kind of small and the way we like it. And that includes reducing overhead, unless you pay us. So if you want to do that, there's a Patreon, patreon.com/HooperCast. There's 3 tiers if you want to donate to us. I think they're relatively reasonable. If you have disposable income, unlike myself, there's a $1 per month pledge, which is you can have the MP3 downloads of the audio show, because right now these audio files get put onto SoundCloud. But with a regular SoundCloud account, they disappear after a while. They turn to ash.
Oh, and it just keeps popping up.
Yes, Steve.
Steve.
I'm going to say it every time.
This is no place, Steve. You can download the MP3s of the show and be able to listen to them whenever you want. That's $1 per month. If you want to donate $2 a month, you can send your questions to the show and we will answer it no matter what it is. I don't care what it is. Seriously, I'll answer whatever you want.
Steve?
I promise you have an opinion on it. We'll answer your question on the show. That's $2 a month. And if you want the video show, if you pledge $5 a month, I will cut these video shows just for you every single week. Yeah. We don't expect you to do this. The show is but we can't really justify doing it for free anymore. Well, and YouTube's gotten nuts with their ads and their demonetization. It's just impossible to,
And I think the name of the game is making a more streamlined show on both, well, really on our end, so that we can provide you with content consistently. The more complicated things get on our end, and the more time consuming it is, the harder it is to actually push out content on a regular basis. Yeah. And so I'm really speaking on Hooper's behalf here, but I think the point is, if we can pare down the show back to the way that we like it and the way that is easiest for us to cut and disseminate, then you guys get content more regularly. And you get content that's a little easier for us to create, thereby making it a little more fun for us to create. And so at the end of the day, you get a better show and you get more shows. And I think that's a win-win.
Dustin and I are much more apt to go long on length if we know that either A, we're not cutting a video version, right, or B, we're being paid to cut a video version. Right. And even if we had one subscriber who pledged $5 a month, I'm cutting a 45-minute long video podcast for essentially half of $1.25 a week. Right. Which is a steal, because I am literally a professional editor.
Right.
So anyways, that's the big news with our channel. You can still catch the show on SoundCloud for free, but if you want any sort of archive beyond this episode or the 100 or so before it, you're going to have to come to Patreon, and that's okay. That's okay. Yep. Dr. Phil says that's okay.
It's fine with me.
It's not a lot per month, and $1 a month is a lot for me. I literally have no spare money to throw around, but I think most people can afford that. And if you like our show, it would be great if you felt like donating to it. Again, don't feel like you have to. I'm not going to cry about it or anything, but just so you know, going forward, if when stuff stops popping up on YouTube, that's why. YouTube's getting cumbersome. They demonetize us because we have a too small subscriber base. We can't even make pennies off this show. So fine, if we have to deliver an ad-free show, we're doing it somewhere else, basically. So,
and I'll just add one thing that's fairly unrelated. You just used the word cumbersome, and I just want to give us all props that we didn't make a joke about Benedict Cumberbatch's name, because every review does that, and I'm like, dude's been in the business for years now. Why are we still joking about his name? Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Go us.
Agreed.
Right.
Go us. Big kudos. Big high fives to everybody.
We just said he was the MVP.
I know.
Yeah. I think him and Thor really, really shine in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's weird because just to tack this on at the end, about the Patreon shit's over. So yeah, patreon.com/HooperCast. If I think you were talking, John, like the world you like the best of the solo films is the Thor world. I think that Captain America does the best with character. I think Thor does the best with world building. And I include Ragnarok in there because it's essentially kind of the Guardians too, but of the main three franchises before the team ups, or independent of the team ups. And I think the Iron Man franchise deserves credit for the tech progression. I've really enjoyed watching the suits go from this boxy, clunky thing that looks and feels like my minivan, like the Mark I suit, to nanotech. Because Jon Favreau in the beginning was like, oh, Tony Stark's a tech-based superhero. And then to go from like, yeah, well, now he's got nanotech, so,
Yeah.
Well, I remember back in the day when they were like, this is really going to be tough to put Thor with these other characters. And it's like, dude, now you got like 40 of these guys.
Oh my God. You've got a talking tree.
Tree person.
A talking adolescent tree.
A talking raccoon. It's so much stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will say that was a great nod with the Kenneth Branagh being the opening line of that movie. That was a great way to kind of close out that Thor universe, because that scene kind of ended that effectively. So,
and my favorite world is Elektra.
Stop it, Dustin.
Oh my!
All right, guys.
I thought you were going to say Electro.
Jamie Foxx is brilliant, John.
Jamie Foxx.
I've got to hang it up.
All right.
Y'all, thanks for coming together and doing this episode. This was a fine entry into the show, and a really fun review to have. So, John, thanks so much for being available for this.
Yeah,
so we'll definitely do it again for Avengers 4, if nothing else, if not something beforehand.
Yes.
So thank you to OBS for being reliable for what would have been an impossible episode without you. So thanks a lot. I hated you months ago, but now I'm really thankful for you.
You're welcome.
At HooperCast on Twitter, at Dustin Weldon, at Connor Dempsey, and Facebook.com/HooperCast, Patreon.com/HooperCast now, YouTube.com/ a bunch of weird letters. I don't really give a shit now because we're not going to be there soon. So peace out. Anyway, yeah, guys, thanks for supporting the show, whether you just watch it or you pay for it or you tell friends. Thanks for at least not sharing the link and saying, don't ever watch this shit. Thanks for not doing that. But a big F you to everyone who pirates the show, which, Dustin, I found a lot more since we last spoke about this. There's a whole oh my God, there's hundreds. Anyway.
Right.
I'm flattered, but then I'm really angry too. All right. See you guys. Thanks.
Later.
Go see Infinity War. That's it. HooperCast. See ya. Goodbye.
Bye.